I'm excited about today. I'm excited about talking to myself. I'm excited about recording a journal for myself, for my own little personal thinking exercises where I take my thoughts throughout the day and I talk to myself about them because they haven't yet formed into real, actual things. I like this practice. I like what I have going here. I like that I'm not talking to anyone. I like that I get the opportunity to try to shape things for myself. Like I said, I think that that does more for me and for anybody in the future than it would for me to try to polish thoughts and make something out of them. I think that it's more meaningful to talk about things as you think them and to share those things and share that thought process. Today, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better common understanding of a word, I'd like to talk about doing, the doing of things. So yesterday I did a very long conversation about the situation that seems to be unfolding at the moment. And the truth is, this would not be possible. This moment would not be happening if it weren't for the fact that people are uh, not only united by a common sense of discomfort and unrest and um, distrust and feeling abused and confusion about the material success that they feel should be occurring, and the lack of concern and representation coming from the institutions that are supposed to serve them. I think that is how most people experience their condition. I think most people are experiencing the American condition not as a matter of necessarily an obvious and observable decrease in material circumstances. I think people are feeling the effects of that, but they're not feeling the thought of it. What people mostly feel, I think, is a what people mostly look to is a lack of effective representation. So while people may be actually having less buying power over time, they don't conceive of it as being them having less buying power over time. They feel squeezed and they feel like, is it? I thought we had better healthcare than this. I thought we had better infrastructure than this. I thought we had better, whatever it is. I'm confused because I grew up believing some things about my society that just aren't true. So maybe they're confused, but they don't see it. But anyway, what I was trying to say is what they see, what they actually are able to identify is that perhaps this unease has something to do with the fact that they can look at their elected representatives who are acting in the public sphere, allegedly on their behalf, and those people just seem utterly disconnected from reality. So the thing that most people observe is that their government isn't doing things right. The thing that most people can grasp onto is my representation is not representing me because the things that I care about, the things that I think about, don't have anything to do with the actions that they're taking. And so for the majority of people, like that is the major conflict in their experience. Without going too deep, and then there's different levels of serious takes about how that is and why that is and what that means. But by and large, it effectively conceals the conversation about where the value is going. Uh, and maybe that's not actually at the core of this conversation. Maybe the core of this conversation is something to do with how corrupt individuals are that are in positions of legislative power. Yeah, I get that. I can see that. I can see how, like, somehow, we've reached a point where our systems of education are so immensely terrible that we have no way of conceiving of what the causes of these situations might be. And I'm not saying that, like, there's a genius capability of being able to perceive patterns and things. I'm just saying, like, let's look and see what the themes in history are, and if any of them relate to our current circumstance, right? Either in the immediate past or in the immediate future. And speaking about the immediate future, 2021 is very interesting. We are 29 days into the year 2021. And what is the common theme so far? The common theme so far is that the people have infiltrated positions of power, places of power, and are attempting to extract that power for themselves. Like I said, I think the first incarnation of that at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the month, was one born out of extreme ignorance about many different things. One, about the source of anxiety, and about the possible impacts of the activities that were taking place, and what it was that people were doing, and in whose support of who they were doing it. Gosh, there's a lot of ignorance there. But it does represent the fact that there is a volatility to things. And that volatility comes out of a pervasive condition of something being wrong. And the only, like, the way that people are experiencing this, people are not experiencing a pervasive condition of something being wrong by being able to even necessarily perceive problems about where is the value of my contributions to society going. People, I think, assume they have the value of their contributions to society, but what they are experiencing is they are experiencing their elected officials not representing them, which is a source of continual anxiety. And by not representing, I don't mean people know what they want and that their representatives are doing the opposite. I'm saying that people have needs and priorities, and they're seeing that their needs and priorities have absolutely nothing to do with what they see their elected officials doing in the news. So, that disconnect, that, like, something is deeply wrong, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's this system or, like, what the heck's going on. There must be, like, space aliens, Illuminati, something, because this is crazy. And then they find other people that are like, yeah, it is crazy. And they're like, oh, I guess I'm not crazy. And maybe their first experience with that is like a cartoon, right? Like where somebody says tongue in cheek that everything's messed up, and somebody's like, yeah, it is messed up. It is messed up. I like this show. This show tells it like it is, right? Like, but what does that mean? It's messed up. And so people are kind of looking for what the answer is. Like, what is messed up? Why is it messed up? How does mess up happen? Somebody please explain this to me. Because our education system doesn't do that. And what inevitably happens is one of the writhing, ignorant tendrils happens to reach a little bit higher than the other writhing, ignorant tendrils. I'm not saying ignorant as pejorative. I'm saying, it's a shared common condition that we all have. And that tendril starts assigning blame, almost like, soothsaying. It's that guy over there. It's this guy over here. It's that girl. It's this, it's blah, 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 blah. You did it. You left the toilet seat up, like whatever it is. And it really hits traction when somebody is able to point to something that people already don't understand or already distrust. So if you're able to look back in history and say, so one of the things that we are really proud about as a country is that we are a melting pot. We are a place where everybody comes together and we're all Americans together and everybody equal rights and, like civil liberties and representation and, everybody get along, and the Coca-Cola commercial, like that's something that we are all very proud of. So in a moment of anxiety, all this inclusiveness that's happened, if somebody points and says, like, look at the inclusiveness has happened and this is the result, then you're like, oh, there is correlation between increasing inclusiveness and the problem. gee, I wonder what that means. And it becomes extra compelling when you're able to fall in line to traditional prejudices and say, like, hey, stop me if you've heard this one before, but I think I know who the problem is. And that stop me if stop me if you've heard this one before is especially sad because we all have heard it before. We all have heard it before. And we know the end of that story. And yet, uh, I have no idea. So maybe it's this sense of like, well, this is just what happens, right? I mean, like you just move forward on the information that you have and break stuff. Maybe something will change, right? I don't know. It's just profound ignorance. Because so one of the things that this feels like is people make a lot of big deal about guillotines, right? Like this is somehow symbolic of the French Revolution, and it is in that there's a general sense of unease that won't go away, and when it won't go away, something has to happen as a result of it. And the reason I guess it feels sort of like the Weimar Republic is because the thing that up until like that seems to be taking shape is that there's a jerk that it's aligning around, coalescing around, which we're doing our very best to make sure that that's not the form that this takes. But at the same time, it's going to take some form, and it might take the form of open rebellion. And we don't want that either, because look at what happened in France. And that I mean, they did what they wanted to do internally, but then it just it became everybody's problem. And that set conditions that carried on into some nastiness that endured, I mean, probably forever. I don't know. We're still in history, by the way. Uh, so one of the things I was trying to say at the end of my journal last night was once you start casting stones, they just keep going. And the argument I was making yesterday was um, taken from that video that I watched on Metal Gear Solid 5 about how you go and you make war and then you come home and you happen to bring it with you. But in this case, it was you make war at home and then it just becomes part of what you do, right? A military leader came into power and the military became the way that they interacted with the rest of the world. I mean, we kind of lived that experience, right? Like we came about as a country through military rebellion, and as a result, it's become a part of our identity, and we've taken it abroad. We've given it legs, because it's a part of our culture, I guess. Um, tell an American that they should value that they should hold values and virtues about pacifism or being slow to anger. No, that runs contrary to our culture because it's not who we started out as. So it's almost like you can only move in one direction there, right? Because if you want to identify as what you see as being valuable, then you're going to have to continue to propagate those values. So again, it doesn't stop. There's only one direction you can go with some of this stuff. All right. So we don't want to run around blaming people for things. Especially when blaming people is actually, I don't have to say it, some of the worst war crimes, atrocities against humanity that have ever happened in the history of us. You don't want to go around blaming people. You don't want to coalesce power into a jerkwad who relieves your tensions about things you don't understand by telling you things that absolutely aren't true to make you feel like you can do something about it when you can't, and drawing power to himself. And then you also don't want to, start breaking things, because once you start breaking things, then things are going to continue to be broken forever. So, and by breaking things, I mean people, specifically people. You can break theoretical things. Theoretical things sometimes have to be broken. Like if somebody wants something and you have to tell them, sorry, sweetheart, but we can't have that right now. Like that's okay. You can do that. But it's the actual condition of human warfare, human violence that is immensely problematic. And I have a hard time, like, I know metaphor is very strong, right? Like this concept of I've written in a journal once that metaphor is a lie about something that helps you understand common qualities about things. So if I were to tell you that I have an unrequited love for someone and I feel suffocated by it, that other person might also tell you that they have a stalker and they feel suffocated by that stalker, right? Well, suffocation is what you do to a person when they are dying, like it's a person murdering someone else. So suffocation is resonates and it's actionable. You know, like somebody is guilty of murder if there's suffocation involved. So the idea of like the metaphor of this is suffocating, does that mean one of those people is guilty of murder? No, no. Please understand metaphor. Please understand that there is a difference between things that we use terminology for and things that actually are, you know, human aggression. And I'm going to pull this book out again because there's writing on this, and it would be beneficial for somebody to look at this, because this is not just hyperbole. This is an observable condition. This is a book called On Killing: The Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society. And this book will help you understand that there is a actual experiential difference between disagreeing with people or telling somebody no, or changing the way society works, or differences in, you know, legislation or representation or ownership or property or money, and killing. That is a different thing, and different things happen to human beings when they experience it in one way or another, either doing killing, being killed, or seeing someone killing or killed. So it's different, and the results of it are different. And it would behoove you, if you don't understand that, if you're stuck in the idea of metaphor, of, you know, like that something else is equivalent to killing through means of metaphor, then I recommend you read this, because they are not the same. And it's very, very difficult to take that sort of poison out of society once it's there, or out of an individual once it's there. Okay, so all that to say, there's bad decisions being made, and we don't seem to be learning our lessons from history because we don't seem to be reading it. Okay, we're all sort of reacting ad lib to this based on our gut instinct and combinations of other messages that we're receiving from other places by people who are also deeply confused but taking stabs at it, or people who are just willfully malicious about the situation. So I think all of that is about the 6th. So let's talk about this week. Let's talk about the not violent, but not organized, but what's the word I'm looking for? Class action, organized. I don't know the word I'm looking for is. I'm going to kick myself later, but this situation going on with stocks, situation going on with hedge funds and GameStop stock and Reddit Wall Street Bets, retail traders, and yada yada yada. Fundamentally different. Again, I think it's similar thematically in that people are experiencing some general unease, and they feel as if somehow somebody somewhere is doing something that's affecting their life for the worse, and they have no say in it, and it challenges their understanding of what American society is. And at this point, we're all kind of wise to the fact that something's not right. And what was, you know, a couple of weeks ago, people acting out of ignorance and not understanding this sort of thing, is this week a little bit, I think, more of an intelligent take on the situation, which is, you know, there's a reason our legislators aren't writing law that represents us. And there's a reason that we feel squeezed by things like rent and groceries and healthcare. And there is a reason why the material circumstances of the majority of Americans seem to be declining. And there's a reason why, you know, the language of you know, finances and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer seems to resonate and be one of those just truisms in society, even though we feel like we have representation. Like, maybe like maybe there's a common cause, and maybe there's a another discussion to be had here, and maybe it has something to do with money, and it does have something to do with money, and this is accidentally. So if you know anything about memes and the internet, you can't force a meme. You're not going to be able to reach out there and convince anybody of anything, especially if it's let's do something about something. You have to. It's all little waves that influence one another, right? You get pushed, and so you push, and it's weird that we've really had the capacity to do something like this for a long time, but we haven't. And the reason is, if somebody were to stand up and say, let's do this, the only people who would even possibly notice are the people who wouldn't want anybody to do this. Everybody else is going to be like, okay, but look at this picture of a cat I found. Like there's no the only culture in the internet is a culture of non sequitur. So this emerged, and when it emerged, it resonated. So there was already this feeling there, and there were all these unconnected dots that were cultural in nature. That once this moment happened of we've hooked a hedge fund, it was like, oh, we're doing this now. Yeah, this is what I always wanted to do. Actually, this is my, and here's that word that I didn't want to lead off with, praxis. This is it. I found it. I finally know how to engage with my society. I guess I can throw this letter I was going to write to my congressman in the garbage and go actually participate in the world. Which it makes sense that, again, given the severe lack of education, especially about historical circumstances and how all these things came into place in the first place, that we would have no vocabulary or innate understanding of how any of this works, or that any of it existed, and that we could participate in it, and that you can go online and open an account, and should open an account in several different firms, and can participate in these things as long as you have a couple hamburgers worth of dollars to do so. All right, so this is the moment that we're living in now. Couldn't have gotten here any other way other than emergent memes, I guess you could say, that exist in the context of a general unease that nobody really truly understood. And even the folks that do understand them, there's absolutely you're not going to talk down to somebody and introduce, you're not going to convince somebody that they should participate in something, especially if you're going to have to educate them first. No, it's not going to happen. But this happened. So then what? Then what? Well, some things are happening still. One of the things that I learned today, one of the things I saw today was that Robinhood, which is the firm / app / company that allows regular average Joe, common man, retail trader investors participate in stocks, which again, anybody can do that. It's just their branding, right? Like that's just how they decided to appeal to people. Well, anyway, they were put in a position where they stopped allowing people to buy GameStop, and I'm not going to go into the full detail again, but they stopped it, and it turns out that maybe that's because Citadel LLC gives them 40% of their income, and Citadel LLC owns Melvin Capital, who is the one that the investors were putting the squeeze on, and all these investors were primarily working at the GameStop, so they stopped letting people. Wait, what did I just say? Working at a GameStop. And you investing in Robinhood to invest, or going through Robinhood to invest in GameStop. So there was a conflict of interest there, and it's probably illegal what Robinhood was doing. And you're seeing some memos or precursors to legislation being drafted up by members of Congress about this was an illegal move. And now today, Robinhood put out a job ad. They actually put a job ad out on their website that was like, we need somebody to go to Washington, D.C. and talk to Congress about matters of finance and legislation. So they're like, we will give you money if you will go talk to Congress and tell them what the laws should be about this, because if the laws don't change, we might be in trouble. And people were saying, like, the news cycle at the time was like, oh, Robinhood had to do this because there's some shady stuff that was going on, and the SEC might have to get involved. And it's like, no, but now maybe. All right. So anyway, there turned out to be sort of an imbalance of how people were treating the ability to purchase more GameStop stock. You would think, like I said yesterday, that if it was a threat, that it would be sort of stopped across the board, right? And there would be this fog of war of like, well, we just don't like it when people do this. There's this sort of like hidden norm or culture that when risk gets weird and the stuff happens, then we just decide this is weird, and we don't do that thing. But it wasn't across the board; it was asymmetrical. I know that Schwab and Fidelity, you could buy it, GameStop stock yesterday at least. It looked like you could. What's the name of the Robinhood-like thing that starts with a P? Public. You can buy it through Public. Merrill Lynch or Merrill Edge, you could not buy it. And so it was like, all right, well, what is all of this about? And the majority of people who were buying GameStop yesterday said that they were buying it through Fidelity or Public. I don't know much about Public. I know that they posted on social media that they're actively trying to kick back against their board of directors to say, no, we do want to make it so that people can continue to buy the share. So I don't know what the dynamics are there. They're having a very public controversy about their internal workings and disagreeing about it. But Fidelity was all like, yeah, cool, come on in. And then I saw an article tonight that was one of the major stakeholders on the Go GameStop side was Fidelity. Fidelity actually owns a lot of shares in GameStop, and so when GameStop has been going up, they've actually earned like maybe billions, maybe hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion. So of course, like Fidelity leaving the door open, I mean, we'll close it, I promise. But in the meantime, like there's $1 billion there. So what does that mean? What does that mean? It means that if you look at the culture in Wall Street Bets and you see what people are saying, I encourage you to look at what these people are like and what they're saying, and the messages that they're sharing with one another, and the video clips they're sharing with one another, and the stories they're sharing with one another, and the way that the things they say in response to one another, and the way that they respond together. It is a community at this point. They have welded together, which is a phenomenon that will make a difference moving forward. If that genuinely is, they're developing a shared vocabulary, and they're developing things that they're looking toward, that they can hold inside, looking back to say this is who we are, and then looking forward to say this is what we're looking for, or this is how we will respond to things. So I was saying yesterday that it needs to transform from being a web page to being a set of values, and it kind of is becoming that. They're drumming themselves into this single block, and on the other side you have Fidelity making what I would say is a very like if everybody's sort of starting to close the door to cover some butts, and Fidelity's leaving one door open, it really demonstrates that that they are not so inclined to stick together and cover each other head to toe as the Redditors are. And that provides the Redditors an opportunity, because let me put it this way, if you are making money owning shares in a company that's profitable, and the company is making money because their employees are adding value to the company beyond what it costs to pay their employees, and you are hiring those employees, and you have only so many positions for those employees, then what you will end up seeing is workers fighting each other to take those positions. You'll see workers fighting one another over who gets to have the position that where they get paid some money to give even more value to the company. So they're fighting over scraps, is what I'm trying to say. They're fighting over scraps. They're fighting each other over something that they should be fighting you for. Do you see where I'm going with this? Fidelity and Robinhood and Merrill Lynch and Charles Schwab and Melvin Capital and Citadel may be fighting each other over something. And not outright, but if there is a siege and you leave a, if there is a siege and you let people through, who's is that? That's more of a, that's at least as much of an overt act as the people who were trying to get through, right? And I don't want to. We have immediate imagery to think of what that conjures, right? They were let in. They're being let in. So, not to, like, again, metaphor, right? There's a difference between violence and action. There's a difference between affecting material things and affecting immaterial things. There's a difference between a man being a wolf to man and working together to sometimes oppose, but always build a better society. There's a difference. There's a difference. There's a difference. All right. So now what happens? What happens is GameStop seems to be today something like $11 billion shorted. So there is still significant loss to be had on the behalf of people who have shorted the GameStop stock if people continue to be allowed to participate in buying, which, like I said, there are some traders. So if they're going to leave the door open, then that provides the opportunity for this to take place. And I don't know if that will be a hallmark of this type of activity moving forward. I think something that something they should probably learn from this is that sticking together is how these things work. I mean, they've done pretty well with that already so far, anyway, I guess. But I don't know. The rugged individualism, looking out for oneself above all others, the individual as opposed to the social, is the hallmark of this system. And therefore, if they were ideologically bound to their position, then they would betray one another. But nobody is ideologically bound to anything. They are also pragmatists, so they will do what is necessary to make this all go away. But in the meantime, it looks like there are some things that are being learned on behalf of the Redditors and everybody who it has folded in behind them. Also, I wouldn't say that this is the end, because one of the things that this has caused, I'm sure in great amounts, at least based on what I'm seeing, is that there are a whole bunch more accounts that are being currently made. It takes a little while for those accounts to be set up and for money to make its way into it. And when you have a bunch of knuckle draggers making a whole bunch of new accounts to put money into, they're probably not there to gamble. They're probably there to participate, right? So next week, we will see reinforcements. Next week, we will see the turning point of Helm's Deep, where a bunch of people who up until that point weren't interested are now all of a sudden jumping in for the express purpose of being a part of what's already seeming to be happening. And by all means, Fidelity, come along for the ride. And we'll see you next week. All right. So, lessons learned. Lessons learned are, if this is successful, which if nothing happens, then it probably, I guess, could be, then it can be repeated. Probably not in the exact same way, because the ground will shift significantly between engagements here. All over. The way that firms interact with one another will change. The way that individuals interact with one another will change. And the firms will have a lot more ability to affect how individuals interact with one another than vice versa. Um, there may be a change in legislation between plays, in which case, whatever the mechanism was that made the GME situation work might, there will have to be conversations had about, okay, now that these things have been changed, how does that affect the ability to organize in the same way again? So one of the things that I had suggested was there might be, over the course of the next couple of weeks, a whole bunch of newly minted millionaires, or if not millionaires, then at least there will be a lot more cash in the hands of people who up to this moment were not likely to have that extra cash sitting around. And when that happens, there will be an opportunity to do something like set up a campaign or set up a nonprofit, and on your page set up a donations portal, and for that donations portal create a whole bunch of advertisements and search engine optimization and social media ads that drive traffic to your site where you have your ads or your donation portal. And if that is done at a certain scale, then it might capture all of this, money that really wasn't there before, and those people don't need. What are they going to do? Are they going to go buy a bunch of computers or reinvest? They'll probably reinvest, right? Like that would be the immediate response. Is like, we did it, let's do it again. Who's next? That would be the immediate response I think that we would see. And I think everybody knows that if this is successful, the immediate response is going to be like, okay, you've got a whole bunch of people here with money. Who's next? So there will be every effort in the world to try to confuse that effort or stop that effort through legislation or through behavior changes among investment firms. Whatever it is, there must be some change between the first skirmish and the second, so that it doesn't just move from, all right, do it again, 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 because they will have the ability to do that. And if something's effective, if they're winning, they're going to stop, right? They're not going to stop. If they win, they're not going to stop. They're going to do it again, and they're going to get better each time because they're going to have more resources, and they're going to know that it works, and so they're going to have better morale. So if this first one happens, then it'll happen again, unless there is an immense campaign to change the laws, to change the behaviors among investors, and to confuse the means of communication for the central group. The best thing that could happen for the firms, for the capitalists, is that they just don't let go. And one way or another, this will go away. But if it doesn't go away, if something caves, if this works, then it will take a lot more effort to disrupt that machine than it would be at this moment. And I have to look into that, because I don't know if they have the means to stop it. Wow. I'm sure they do. I mean, because they're stopping buying of GME shares, right? But again, Fidelity didn't. Other firms aren't. Like Public is internally saying we want to be able to keep this ability open for our traders, and Charles Schwab, I think, was still allowing it. So it's like it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. I think it's happening. The only thing I can think of would be three things at once: legislation change, immediate emergency change in favor of the investment firms, in favor of folks like Melvin Capital and Citadel. The law has to change. Like, you can't just let somebody whose total net worth is less than $10 million participate in the stock market. And two, uh, absolutely like counterintelligence to break up Wall Street bets and all the ways in which these people communicate with one another. But they have language now. They have language now. So it's not just that this, like, they can call out, Yorlehi-hoo, and somebody else will call out Yorlehi-hoo, and they know where each other are now. Like, they have language. So you have to, like, you can't just like break up their site now. You have to ban the words they're using to find each other. Okay. So legislation, firm legislation, aggressive cultural infiltration to break up and confuse the people who are talking to one another, and change of behavior, circling of the wagons in terms of standards, norms, practices, behaviors, communication among firms, so that they can get on the same page and nip stuff in the bud moving forward. Like Fidelity's going to get a talking to, and they're going to say, look, this is supposed to stay in the family. So everybody behave. All right. So then, what would the answers to that be? Well, I don't think that I'm going to have the answers to those things. I think that is going to take a larger conversation, and I think that larger conversation is not. That's one of the few you can act in a group like what Wall Street Bets has right now, but you probably can't effectively think in a group like Wall Street Bets has now, because while it's very easy to use a platform like that to say go 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 go, it's not very easy to use a platform like that now that it's been confused and compromised to formulate complex strategies when you have people who are intentionally trying to mess that up. So I think I started talking about now would be a good time for somebody to set up a donations portal for a campaign or nonprofit where these kinds of thought processes could take place, where you could actually set aside time for some professionals to talk to one another who know the different areas, who are financially inclined or understand investments or understand legislation or yada, yada, yada. This would be a time to facilitate think tanks, both internally through professionals and externally, moderated, dozens of Zoom calls constantly everywhere. Just being able to fund conversations about it. However, that would. So I talked last time about how Wall Street Bets was the place where the conversation happened, and Robinhood was the place where the action was taken. So that represented the logistical chain of the logistical chain of this activity. A nonprofit claiming to do these kinds of things, facilitating higher level conversations about strategy and policy and action, that was receiving donations, possibly in the numbers of hundreds of millions from these newly minted millionaires who were donating their winnings toward inventing better solutions to conduct this moving on into the future, would definitely be considered a major part of the infrastructure, and therefore would draw a lot of fire. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's good. Maybe a couple of these things could empty out Wall Street Bets of attention, right? Because after all, that was just a fluke. If you have a nonprofit that's intentionally trying to, or a campaign that's intentionally trying to foster thinking about this kind of thing, then that seems like a more traditional threat, especially if it's being well funded by all these individuals. But again, they're chaos agents. They can do it again. They can do it again if they're able to organize. So there is a whole bunch of potential. There's a whole bunch of potential. If it worked out in such a way that through collective action, individuals were able to recover the extracted value from companies that were put there by workers, that made their way into stocks that were being traded again for a profit by investors. If people were able to recapture that and redistribute it and bring it back into not only immediately the economy, but all and to people, but also into some sort of tool to help shape a better way, then it would be the most precise such change in all of history. It would be the cleanest, uh, least damaging, and most inspiring, I think, such change in history. Uh, it would it if this somehow becomes something like that, then uh, America earns its place in history. Um, yeah, but it's got to be. What's the other potential? The other potential is either nothing happens, nothing changes, the storm gets weathered, uh, the original most successful investors from the Wall Street Bets crowd disappear or change their minds or whatever, and things go back to normal, or they splinter, and just the message of the individual is too strong in our culture, and so maybe we just aren't allowed to talk about it anymore, right? Maybe we have a radical in our political system who just says you can't say collective. That's a bad word. But either way, it's a pivotal moment. And this might be the last exit before looking to history, uh, Rome or France or Germany, or a bunch of other, this is it's a chance. It's a chance. If we pass the exit, then we'll see what happens next. It won't be pretty. And I'm not saying like I mean anybody that watches this knows at this point that I am I will do everything that I possibly can to take care of somebody, even if they wish me the ultimate harm. But the majority of people don't think that way. It seems something will happen. So this is the best case scenario. Maybe we just need to hire somebody to communicate that, right? Hey, let's. Robinhood gave me an idea. Let's hire somebody to go to Washington, right, and tell some folks, hey, did you know that this is the only good opportunity to sort of like smooth this all out before all the lines and arrows start showing up on the maps? Did you know that? Because it could be. Okay. Well, it seems pretty clear at this point, in my opinion, right? Um, okay. Good night.